Welcome to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jared Downey. Today we have two guests, the first time interviewing them, first time meeting them about 10 minutes ago. So we've got Jake Tattler. He is the technical sales at Minetek, and Yannick Coutet. He is the regional sales manager at Minetek as well. This is the first of 3 episodes with Minetek. So if you're watching this, just go onto our channel, and within a month or two, you'll see more coming. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Good to have you on.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here. Really appreciate that.
Can you just give us, just for anybody who doesn't know, obviously this audience is all over the world watching. Can you, I like to throw that out there right before we start the interview to make people good and nervous. Can you just give us an overview of who Minetek is as a company? Yannick, maybe start with you.
Yeah, sure. No problem at all. Look, so one sentence that really sums up Minetek is a company that prides itself on as an innovative and cost-effective solutions provider to mines across the globe, right? So currently we have about 2,800 projects in 28 countries, which has allowed us to have a very broad range of applications and the ability to deal with different and various mines with their different problems, climates, infrastructure all around the globe, right? So through this experience that we have, it's very rare that we come to a situation where Minetek can't be a solutions provider. And those 4 pillars that we actually look after, it comes into water management, which we'll touch on today. We actually have another 3 pillars that are important as well. So we have air ventilation, sound attenuation, and we have the power side as well. So providing power supply management to all different mines.
How close do the 4 pillars work in conjunction with each other?
Look, I'd love to say that we are always working with all 4 pillars in every site. Unfortunately, not every site has the merit for every application, right? So it's something that we do work on. I mean, some sites might have some water management strategies as well as underground with the air ventilation, and some sites might just have the sound and power. So it varies, and there are some sites where we can have all 4 departments in the one shop, but it's something that we're definitely working on. It's just sometimes the mines don't have the capabilities to have all 4, right? Not all mines have an underground approach, and some mines are just surface, but yeah.
I just wanted to clarify one more thing on it. Is it your teams, do they work in all 4 pillars? Does every team member work, or do you have it, is it divisioned out by the pillars as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, I work in the water department. So does Jake, and we actually have divisional managers that look after each department. So we don't cross departments in a sense that we focus on selling our equipment for the other departments. However, if we're in a conversation like we're having now, and we're also speaking with an underground mine where they need a primary or secondary fan for air ventilation requirements, or a mine site needs our sound attenuation packages, we definitely know enough to be able to have that conversation to say, hey, this is what we can provide. We're a fan company at the end of the day, and which means that we can provide really good airflow, and we have these other pillars of the business that we can help you out. Would you be interested in having a conversation with so-and-so through this department? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Jake, this is kind of a good time to bring you in on the technical sales side. Is how often when you're going to these sites, is that, you go for a fan and you leave with, talking about water?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very common practice. And I was just about to jump in and say prior that most sites we go to, and when you get a bit of an understanding for their side and what their challenges are and what they're facing, you'll get, at the back end of the conversation, they all lead into one another, right? So as a solutions provider and a company that provides solutions across the board, you'll go and you'll have a chat about the underground ventilation. And then as you're sort of coming up, you'll see, water, that conversation will come up. What else do you guys do? It's a very natural flowing conversation. And a lot of the mines do suffer from the same sort of challenges, and we do cover quite a lot of them. And in terms of the synergy between the products too, in terms of our water solutions, obviously you need electrical infrastructure to power these evaporators. So that's obviously a hand in hand. Sometimes you will figure out a project there that we work together. And then of course, same with the sound and water, and obviously electrical and underground, all these types of things. There's lots of crossover between the divisions in that sense.
Like typically we're dealing with mine managers. We're dealing with head of engineering or chief engineers. So these guys have a really good understanding of where they're struggling within the mine for lots of different problems. So typically when we're at a table and we're having a conversation about our water evaporator units, it's always part of a conversation to say, hey, look, we're struggling with this. We don't have enough power for your evaporator units. What can we do here? And we say, yeah, no worries. We'll supply the infrastructure with a transformer, a substation to help power that site. Oh, actually, we're actually removing the water because we're creating a new void and for a new underground mine. Oh, fantastic. So for that underground mine, did you need a primary or secondary fan? We can help you with that. And then another option that always comes up is that we're actually really close to community here at this mine site. Can you manage the plume drift on your evaporator units? Yes, we can. And is noise a concern? Oh, yes, it is. Okay, fantastic. Well, we can actually attenuate and quieten down our units. So whether that's fixed plant or whether that's mobile plant, we can help you that because we have a sound attenuation pillar.
Let's talk about our heavy industry tour brought to you by Savannah Equipment, supplying mining equipment worldwide, and Geograph, solving customer challenges through innovation and design, higher performing parts, engineered solutions, on-time spare parts supply, and high-quality repairs. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry World Tour. LiveMine is the data management solution for the digital mine, making mining operations paperless through an intuitive and easy-to-use app developed by mining professionals with decades of real-world experience. Trusted by operators in 7 countries across the globe. Get better and more accurate data faster than ever and throw away your paper plods, PDF printouts, and shift sheets. Visit livemine.com.au to learn more. Capital Limited are a leading global mining services provider with expertise across the entire mining value chain. Their end-to-end services include exploration and production drilling, in-surface and underground operations, load and haul, as well as assay laboratories. For 20 years, they have delivered best-in-class safety performance, professionalism, and reliability to customers worldwide. Capital have recently expanded into the Americas, where they continue to deliver the highest standards of excellence in mining services. Learn more at capdrill.com.
Does that give you a bit of a better understanding?
Yeah. How often are people bringing you to site? And I've got a follow-up question to that, but how often are you actually going on to the sites and figuring out these setups? Like pre-sale?
There can definitely be weeks where we're there, weekly, where we could be on a different site, Sometimes we could be somewhere in the US or sometimes we can be somewhere in the middle of Australia. I mean, like the good thing is we have a large team that can cover a lot of different areas around the globe. Don't you reckon, Jake?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's all depends on the client. Usually at some stage it's a preference to get to site. You never get a better setting than you do when you're, boots on the ground and there. But as Yannick said, we're a global company. So we have obviously staff based in the US, Australia, South America, Africa. We're covering those major mining areas across the globe, and that's where, we use those services to get to the sites.
That kind of leads me into my next question, though. What are the common problems when you're going onto these mines? Is there sort of a theme, a water issue theme that both of you are hearing?
Yeah, I mean, it depends when you say what are the common problems, because sometimes when we have conversations over the phone, and this brings us back to why it's really important for us to be on site, right? So over the phone, and Jake probably could agree to this, a mine would say one thing and say, oh, look, the water issues here that we have on site are, not that bad, and we will get it managed, or, we don't have a problem here. But you guys are more than welcome to come to site and have a look and see if you can help the situation. And then when we get to site, what's said over the phone to what's reality is completely different. So it's almost like mines are not allowed to talk about what's going on in real life over the phone. And it's until you're there, they can tell you the real truth. Don't you reckon?
Yeah, sometimes that's the case. And I think also it's just a bit of, when you get everyone in the room and you have an opportunity to meet with a bunch of different people, they all have a different perspective. And to some, it's much more of a serious issue than to others, right? So see, that comes down to knowing the mines and knowing who to speak to, and getting there on the site. You can actually, stand there and see it and say, what about this? What about this? What about this? And they, that's where you'll get that sort of immediate feedback on where those problems are. But it's a very varied, to go back to your question, is a host of different applications that we look after. Water is quite dynamic, and that's why it's exciting for myself and Yannick, is that there's a whole different scope of different challenges within water, but we're adaptive and we're able to supply a solution that can help with a lot of these.
Definitely.
Yannick, I thought who did you say was generally your go-to person on the site? You said it was the manager, but I can't remember.
It really depends. I mean, look, lots of mines have different people that provide different responsibilities and have those different responsibilities. But look, a lot of the time mine managers are quite important people to meet up with because I guess they have a really good understanding. Operation managers as well have a really good understanding of the whole operation of the mine. And then, process engineers. So it really differentiates in titles on what the mine is actually specifically titled them, if that makes sense. I mean, superintendents, managers, these are the type of people that we really deal with. The guys that are boots on the ground, and then obviously we deal with the corporate side as well when we have to have conversations with COOs or general managers and CFOs and CEOs.
Does your mine plan keep up with changes on site? When it comes to managing a mine, you never know what's around the corner. When conditions change and you need answers yesterday, don't get held back by your scheduling software. With Micromine Elastri, you can explore a broader range of scenarios, rapidly test options, and slash your waiting times. Account for more in your mine plan and be ready with the right answers when questions arise. It's time your software matched the pace of your site's demands. Visit micromine.com/Elastri to learn more. CIM is Canada's leading technical institute dedicated to the sustainability of our industry. Members enjoy professional growth opportunities through CIM libraries, publications, webinars, societies, and the job board. Experience the CIM community firsthand at the Conference of Metallurgists, August 19th to 22nd, ICARD, September 16th to 20th, and the CIM Health and Safety Conference, October 6th to 8th. Visit CIM.org for more information and join CIM today.
Yeah, what I was talking about, referencing the site managers or even the engineer, process engineers, a lot of them though, are they, well, especially if you're just managing the mine, you might not necessarily be a water expert. So when they're telling you over the phone, they're telling you, I would assume, based on sort of their knowledge of water management, right? And then you actually get there and then they point to it and they think it's one thing and it's something completely different. Is that sort of the scenario you end up in?
Yeah, no, that's a really fair point. And another group of people that we actually forgotten to mention is actually environmental managers. So the hydrologists, environmental managers are very much the people that have a better understanding of the water quality than we do. But it's until we get that opportunity where they ask the questions and we can actually present and show them the technical application and the technical side of our units, then is when they get a really good understanding and we're on the same page. We can present this online. We can present this in a Teams meeting, but there is something about being face-to-face and presenting to these guys and letting them have the opportunity to ask really good questions where we debunk a lot of the actual concerns, their objections, and what the actual need is on site.
Yeah, well, the other thing that came to my mind is, and Jake, maybe I'll bring you in for this one as well, is that when you go to site, if there's the traditionalist, right? This is the way we've done it. Are they sometimes bring you onto site with all that traditional sort of approach in mind? And we should probably clarify even what that is, because I actually don't know what the traditional way would be. But are you sort of going in there with that, dealing a lot of times with someone with that mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. It plays a factor. And obviously being an alternative to what's traditional. And as you say, I guess to go to that point first, the most common, I guess, traditional techniques of water management are, storing water in ponds, lagoons, dams, everyone's got a different name for it, impoundments. It's they're the most common, I guess, number one, trying to capture all your water, save it all. The issues with that are obviously in terms of dam safety. When you have an excess of water, you're going to have trouble storing it. You're going to need to find alternatives to manage that, whether it be, I guess, another common one is treating the water to a certain code and then pumping it into local rivers or environment or areas where you can do this. Obviously, that backs onto the other part, which is water treatment, where you can also potentially reuse this water in some capacities. But I guess really where we're looking at as well, some of the other times, if it's a wastewater in a stream where it's not effective to treat, they might truck it off site and also maybe just play a bit of a game of pumping it around the site to different areas to try and just stave off the issue. And it's a bit of a short-term fix, that sort of last solution in terms of pumping and transfer, they call it. They shift the water around to different areas, sort of try to keep ahead of it. But eventually you're going to get to a point where that's no longer feasible. So where I guess our solution differs is that you can use it in a host of different ways. So you can use it in a way that it's a part of those other solutions as a hybrid approach where you can, if let's say you got the water treatment scenario and you're needing to treat some water to reuse it throughout your plant or underground mine or wherever, which most sites are going to have some sort of reuse aspect for water, especially those with the processing facility. So we could handle, if you're in a position where you have, let's say, 1 million gallons of water and you're only reusing 5 million gallons. So you're only reusing 500,000 gallons rather. And what do you do with that other 500,000? And that's sort of the question. And if it's not feasible to treat it, or it's, it's going to cost millions of dollars to treat, or trucking it off site's cost prohibitive in most cases, you have to look at options to either store it. And then obviously, depending on what storage capacity you have, you're in that sort of dam safety conversation. And then you look at something like what we do in terms of evaporating that water and making sure that waste is not a safety issue, making sure it's not an environmental compliance issue. And they're sort of the main areas where we're looking at that in that sense.
So if you've gotten as far to be on the site though, are they already thinking in the terms of water evaporation? Are they already in that?
In the realm. Yeah, you're right. It's by the time we get to a site, we've usually had a conversation that sort of outlines, we've identified a type of issue that they may have, or, that, as Yannick said, potential issue. And then we get to the site, understand that a bit further. Sometimes for some clients, it's further along in the process. It might be after we've done an initial proposal and we come to site to refine that and make sure that it's going to meet their needs and their standards and exactly that type of final refinement. But in the other case, sometimes you have to, we're going in the early stages where we understand they have a bit of an issue, but they want us to come to site and take a look at it. It's really based on the client's preference and obviously how easy it is to get to a site. Some of the places we go are quite remote. So that's another factor.
Yeah, I get you're not allowed to put these secret cams on when you're having. I would love to hear some of those conversations on site.
Definitely.
We'll try to bring it to real world application as much as we can. Yannick, are there any, and then Jake, actually, if you have another one too, same question to you, but are there any sort of case studies that come to mind that sort of to you exemplify what you're delivering to the industry on the water side specifically?
Yeah, definitely. Look, there are plenty of case studies where we can mention where our units have been extremely successful. And look, I don't know if I can mention actual mines is their names in, specifically, but what I can mention is that there have been a couple of mines that come to mind where, these sites were coming to a closure where they had nothing left to mine because they were at end of life of mine. The other option is that they have, if they could remove the water from the pit, they would actually increase their life of mine. So for them, the return on investment is an absolute no-brainer. What they do is that they have a big pit, right? So they finish mining in one section. They're coming towards another section of the mine, but it's full of water because it's never been touched, full of rainwater. They've pumped water. They've transferred it to this section because they never anticipated on actually mining that area. Yeah. But then when a geology team or the hydrologist team have come in and they've done their tests, they realize actually there's a lot of coal or there's a lot of metals there. We actually need to access that point. So what happens is then they scramble, they scratch their heads and think, we've got all this water. We've got billions of gallons of water that we need to remove. If we do remove it, it might cost us a fortune in the traditional methods. But if we could think of a way to remove that at a cost-effective way, it's actually going to give us another 10 years of life of mine. And the return on investment is millions of dollars, millions and millions of dollars. So that's where Minetek really come into play, right? We're able to remove this water out of that pit for them at a very quick rate where it can pretty much take them to dryness. They can then remine that section of the pit, increase their life of mine, and that's the solution.
Is that the water evaporators? Is that what I think I used the word evaporators instead of evaporators. I know someone's going to make fun of me for that. But anyway.
So it's mechanically enhanced evaporation. So that's exactly what it is. So it's doing what the sun does, but mechanically enhancing that with the use of a large fan. So that's where the Minetek evaporators come into play. That's correct.
So those are coming in. Now, are you installing them? Are you bringing them to site, or is this an asset that people purchase from you? How is this actually facilitated into the site?
Yeah, all of the above, Jared. Honestly, all of the above. So we can provide the units on its own. We can provide them as a full setup where, it's a cradle to the grave approach. Sites approach us with the problem and we can provide the whole solution from from the evaporator units, the pipe work, the cabling, the management on site, the scope, the structure, where to put the units, because we have the engineers to help them understand that, right? So we can provide them everything they need to say, turn the key, start it up and let's go, or we can provide just the units. I think 98% of our clients would typically purchase where we call it a system package or almost a turnkey solution where we provide everything and all they need to do is press go.
Jake, same question to you. Is there anything that sort of stands out to you? This is like this is an example of capability, maybe outside of that type of example.
Sure. I mean, there's a million examples we could give you in terms of different applications, but I guess one that stands out on the other side, I guess, is in North America, specifically in the northern sort of states and also up in Canada, is seasonal water and freshet management. So we operate in a lot of areas where obviously you're coming through that winter season and you're coming into the snow melt period, right, where you're going to be ending up with massive amounts of water that it's very hard to measure. It's not really you can model, but oftentimes you'll end up with a lot more or potentially a little bit less than what you were thinking. So that's where a very common application for our systems is to come in. We winterize the units over that period where everything's frozen. And then what happens is the sites will deploy them in that sort of spring period where everything starts to melt and evaporate that water away. So not having those issues with non-environmental compliance, flooding, water, overtopping dams, dam safety, all those types of things.
Actually, I was going to ask about that. Is there for climate-wise and efficiency and those types of things, how do these perform? How are they sort of? I don't even know what the right question is, like rated. Are they easy to get approved on site? Is I guess what I'm asking. Can you sort of bring
definitely.
them on?
It's a good question and a fair point. And I guess efficiency is one of those factors, and something that we do for each of our clients is to understand, the efficiency in the climate. So as Yannick mentioned, I guess for water evaporation projects specifically, we've got about 600 of these systems running in 28 countries. So there's a lot of experience in that. And through that, it's essentially a combination of understanding each climate, whether that's subarctic or humid or tropical or arid. So we've got systems, to give you an idea, Canada, Nunavut, BC, all basically, Alberta, all the different types of states. And then you're moving through to, the US in terms of Montana, Arizona, Colorado, all these types of areas. So it's certainly been widely applied in a lot of climates. Then on the more humid and tropical side, we've got units in South America, in Brazil, Colombia, places like that. And of course, in Southeast Asia and Australia as well, where you're getting that same humid tropical climate. So essentially, how we work that out is the efficiency will differ based on climate, but we understand those impacts. And as part of when we're proposing a solution or we're going to a site, we've performed some studies that have been, we've been helped by a university here in Australia to develop this formula to understand the efficiency of our solution. And how we do that is based on the climate factors and the water quality. And through that combination of understanding our units, the client's water quality, and the factors such as, wind speed, wind direction, humidity, temperature, rainfall, they're sort of the key factors that determine the evaporation efficiency.
Actually, I have to ask, because I've seen pictures, there's a ton of these, will be around going. Does it create I guess like a mist? What is the environment like around in a 1 kilometer radius, let's say, around that environment while these are working? And to sort of add on to that, would this take would these be running for a month? Would it be a day? I'm just trying to get sort of an idea of what it would actually be like at site.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you make as well. And just to go off what Jake was explaining earlier in terms of evaporator units, it's just really important to understand that, we have solutions where we have one evaporator unit working for smaller municipalities around the US, right? So when we're taking on small sites, and then we have multiple units for large sites. So it doesn't matter on the project size, we can definitely have that tailored to it. To answer your question, even if we have 22 units of our operating like we do in Brazil, some of our very humid climates, it's not creating a microclimate, no. So the units are actually 50 meters apart from each other. I'm not sure what that is in feet, but they're 50 meters apart from each other, right?
Yeah.
And being that's the perfect distance. That's the minimal distance that we allow for units to be together. So with that, each plume is doing its own sort of evaporation, and it's not creating like a microclimate where we're cloud seeding or creating rain. It is just a plume. 50% of the contaminants, the metals, the salts are falling back into the feed source, and 50% of the pure water vapor is dispersed into the air and evaporated. And 50% is a nominal average number that we say. I mean, look, it depends on the climate. It depends on where we are in the world, right? It can be greater than 50%, and sometimes it's lower than 50%, but that's for us to do that analysis in the evaporation report to understand what we're achieving in each site.
I saw there was oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jake.
I was going to say, just on the back of that, to your point, I guess, in terms of where that sort of mist goes, it definitely does create, what's not evaporated. We're pumping high flow of water. So in terms of our largest system, a single one of the units is pumping 600 gallons a minute. So you're turning 600 gallons a minute into very fine droplets, atomizing it through our nozzles and forcing it up into the air, right? So what's not evaporating is a very fine mist. But what we have on the back end of that is a control system and automation system, which is backed by a PLC that allows you to control that, the non-evaporated droplets to make sure they're not flying off into the environment or traveling a kilometer. At the max point, it's not going to ever travel a kilometer anyway. By the time, if the wind was that high, that speed, you'd be evaporating extreme amounts. Yeah, so it's really just a matter of, understanding the pond and area that the client has available, whether it's a pit, whether it's a pond, whether it's a dam, whatever it might be. We just need to understand, part of what we do in our assessment is understanding that available area, and then understanding, based on the client's feedback, where that plume can go or spray. And then we set the system up to contain it within, a designated area. So you're not having water, traveling into areas where people are, if it's contaminated water, or where the environment is, or, causing any harm or environmental non-compliance.
You guys are making me look good. I thought that was maybe a dumb question, but it was a great answer. So by extension, that means it was a decent question at very least.
Good question.
You said 600 gallons per minute. That seems like is that one unit?
Yeah,
definitely.
Yep. One of our largest ones. That's what it's pumping through the unit.
So that equivalates, just for numbers for yourself as well, 600 gallons a minute equivalates to about 432,000 gallons per day evaporated at 50%. So about 300 gallons a minute evaporated over 24 hours is 432,000 gallons.
Crazy. So what would I'm not trying to get you to go after competitors with that, but is that big for the market? 600 gallons per minute?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's an interesting question, and obviously we don't want to talk negatively of our competitors, but essentially it's about, to our knowledge, the next largest size, it's about 8-to-1 ratio.
8 to 1
on the market. Yeah, so it takes about 8 of the next largest size we're aware of to equivalate to 1.
I love how we don't want to say anything bad about the competition, but we're beating them 8-to-1. That's so if you're coming on. Okay, well, I won't use the competitions comparison. I don't even know who the competitors are, so it doesn't make really much difference to me. But do you know what is the most that have been on a site at one time? Do you have the max capacity you've done so far?
Yeah, definitely. So we have a site in Brazil that's actually pumping 13,200 gallons per minute, which is a huge number. So that's 22 of our units operational. And that site specifically is actually looking at purchasing another 22 units. So it's such a successful water management program for them that they are wanting to double their unit quantity so they can just have it as their water management strategy.
There's no way to avoid. There's someone listening from a place like California or something going, what? They're evaporating water?
Exactly right. And it's a point that we need to reiterate, right? I mean, when we have these discussions and when we're on site, we're having conversations with people, it's always assumed that we can only evaporate water in Arizona. It's only in climates like, the dry and arid where water is.
That's exactly what I would have assumed.
It's very far from the truth.
So what you did touch on, I think, Jake, you were touching on earlier. So, but some of these are some environments, like you said, you're up in Nunavut doing it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very cold climates like Nunavut.
I mean,
exactly right.
I have to ask how. I don't actually understand it myself.
So obviously we're making hay while the sun shines, so to speak, right? So when we're in areas like that, we're not evaporating water during your winter, freezing cold periods. Typically, these sites are operating our units from about 5 to 6 months a year. So between May to October is when is a lot of the peak seasons of evaporation, right? So they're winterizing the units. And then as Jake touched on as well, it's when we receive the snow melt, that's when our evaporators turn back on again and helping out with the current processed water, as well as dealing with the snow melt. But what really makes Minetek unique, and we haven't touched on this yet, but to get an understanding is that we're a fan company and we have been since 1970s, right? And being a fan company, I guess the engineers and the R&D that we've put into with the many years of experience, that we are experts and global leaders in moving air. So that's a fact. So with that, we are able to achieve a 2,000 part air to 1 part water, air to water ratio. That ratio and impeller design combined is a patented technology and is very unique to Minetek, which is why we can easily say we are global leaders in this space. So we have a very small output of the motor. So being, for example, our largest unit is 90 kilowatt, uses a 75 kilowatt pump. And that is the system that actually does 864,000 gallons a day of throughput, right? So that small motor mixed with that 2,000 part air to 1 part water, air to water ratio at 10 bar of pressure, that is almost like a secret sauce, almost like the KFC 11 herbs and spices within that chicken to make sure that we are able to evaporate that water and get that really high number of efficiency. Very unique to Minetek.
Right. So if I'm understanding right, if you're in an environment where it's not extremely hot, it's because of that setup, it still has an evaporation. It's still
that's
effective.
right. So even the cold climates, the humid climates, and then obviously the hot climates, we are still able to evaporate because it's almost like creating its own atmosphere, right? Our nozzles at the end of the evaporator, we have what we call low fouling nozzle rings. And these little nozzle rings that we have at 4 millimeter diameter with an orifice. So this actually breaks apart and atomizes the water when it's passing through at that high volume. So there's a lot of science behind it. Even the way our unit is designed, the cone shape is a specific design and it's a specific angle for us to achieve that evaporation. So it's not just a cannon that's just purposed there for good looks, right? There's a lot of airflow and R&D that's gone in there to create that volume of air, to create that each droplet, 50% of each droplet can evaporate.
So do you have people though that do not understand that you can in these, like, I mean, operators, like, do you go to a site or get talking to someone at an event and they don't realize, they just look at it and go, oh, well, that wouldn't work for my environment? Like, is that happening, or do most of them have a pretty good understanding of it already?
Oh, definitely. I think it's part of what we do and part of our mission in terms of, I guess, what we were talking about earlier in omnipresence is to, educate as many people as we can about this solution and its effectiveness. So it's certainly not a commonly understood at the current time application, especially in terms of there are a lot of different technologies out there that are attempting to do the same thing. But as Yannick mentioned, the Minetek design is a patented design and something unique specifically to Minetek. So it's quite a groundbreaker in the space in terms of understanding of what it is and, misunderstandings.
Just as we sort of get to the tail end of this, what about the R&D side, the development side of this? Is this are these pretty set models, or is it sort of always looking for the next thing? What's sort of Minetek's approach when you have a unit that's already beating the competition 8-1? I'm going to get someone mad at me. I don't even know who they are. But when you've got a unit that's performing this well, how do you sort of approach that sort of next level that you're looking for?
No, it's a really good question. And just to clarify as well, 8-1 ratio is actually our smallest unit as well.
Oh,
so
okay, now
over the years, Jared, we've definitely engineered, and we've got new R&Ds where we've improved and bettered our units, and we're always looking at bettering our units. So we actually started off with a unit called the 200-100, which is 200 gallons a minute throughput and 100 gallons a minute evaporation. And then through working with different clients and climates and different volumes, we realized that we needed a bigger unit. So that's when we brought in our 400-200, which is a 400 gallons a minute and 200 gallons a minute evaporated, right? And then this is where right now we're at our biggest unit called the 600-300. And you guessed it, 600 gallons a minute throughput, 300 gallons a minute evaporated. Yeah. And the really good news is, and where Minetek is really fortunate, is that, as we mentioned at the start, being in 600 projects in 28 countries now. So that's 600 projects in 28 different countries has allowed us to really take on different water qualities, different scenarios, close to community, far from community, no power, or, a lot of power. It's really given us the ability to, when we see clients and we have this conversation, it's pretty nice knowing that we've probably already dealt with a similar situation. So the credibility and the experience really plays a big factor in, again, why we are global leaders in the space.
So I guess just to wrap up, both of your focus, are you focused in which markets are you both personally focused on? Are you looking at the global market, or are you in a regional? What sort of the setup for both of you?
Yeah, it's a good question. And what we have is we've got a US department, we've got a Canadian department, which is fantastic. Jake and I specifically, we look after South America, we look after Africa, the Middle East, and Australia predominantly. And yes, there are cases where we do get some Indonesian clients as well, some of the bigger mining giants that are there. But those are the regions specifically. However, in saying that, it doesn't mean that we will not deal with anyone else. No, it's just those departments are separated just through having different people on the ground, right? So if we get an inquiry from the US, or we're working with a US client, we actually have feet on the ground that can be at site that next day. So one thing that Minetek really works on, Jared, just to get an understanding there, is speed. And we understand that when a mine site is reaching out, or when we are doing our research and understanding that these guys are under a bit of a situation where, whether it's air or sound or water, we want to be there quickly. We want to be the first response team so we can help them with a good solution quickly, but maintaining quality.
Jake, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think Yannick covered it. Obviously, Yannick and I work as part of the global team. So we assist the teams in the US. We work, and obviously Canada as well. But predominantly, I guess our focus per se would be in that more overarching global market in the areas that Yannick outlined. But it's definitely, an initiative of Minetek to ensure that we can, service the client. And that's at the heart of what we do, is make sure that we're providing a solution, not only, in the front stages like we're talking about, getting there quickly, helping the client to understand what's possible, designing a solution through our engineering team, and then obviously on to project management and the like, but also on the back end as well with our technical services and after sales teams, making sure that, the clients have got a solution that runs, and it runs well, and it continues to run well for, whether it be life of mine or, a year, or all these projects have a different, type of timeline, but that's what we design the systems for, is for longevity and to make sure that it fits a purpose, and it's, a success.
I'm going to leave you both with this will be a professional question, and because you're sort of both in the sales side. When you reach, and I'll let you both answer it, when you have a client, I referenced earlier that sort of this is the way we've always done it, clients. How do you approach that conversation? And that really is just the question. How do you approach the conversation when somebody is going, well, no, we don't need to do that. We do it this way and this works fine. But you know that you've got a better solution.
It's a very common one, and it's a good question to ask. I think it's really about understanding, what value we have to offer, and having the confidence that we have a great solution, and, having the ability to have a really down to earth conversation with the client and say, hey, I understand you're happy with what you have. That's often the case, but what we have here is a solution that can save you, millions, in a lot of cases, millions of dollars, depending on what setup they're looking at, sometimes tens of millions, hundreds of thousands, at the very least, that usually piques a bit of interest. And then from there,
right,
we can break down a bit further on exactly what the other sort of issues it can solve as well. But essentially, at the heart of what we do is we're making our clients, return on investment is a major part of our solution.
Right. So just put that ROI right in the forefront to them.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess it's making sure that we're asking the important questions of, what does a successful water management strategy look like to you this year? And making sure we understand, because if a client comes back to us and says, look, a successful water management strategy looks like this and this, And I'll say, okay, so how can we make it a 10 out of 10? And what's missing? And that's where we open up an opportunity to really understand and have that conversation, because you are very right. A lot of the times we get the people that say, yeah, look, our water management strategy is perfect. We don't need anything. It's running fine at the moment. So, oh, that's great. And then, like, how about we break that cost down, and what does that look like?
Right.
Oh, it's actually costing us a couple $1 million a year just in pump and transfer, or we're paying this much. Okay, cool. So if we have a look at a CapEx purchase of this with zero OpEx cost, or, a very minimal OpEx cost, can we help you with this solution? Oh, well, we didn't know you could do that. Absolutely. So
yeah, no, and it's a great, I think people in the sales world sometimes they try to, there's all sorts of sales training. Sometimes you just go, well, yeah, but here's the dollar. Here's the number. Yeah. Like, let's focus on that.
Just to say as well, I don't feel that Jake and I, I think Minetek in general, actually. So disregard the part saying Jake and I, but Minetek as a whole, I definitely don't feel as though we are a sales team, if that makes sense, because a sales team is almost one of those things where you are giving a product and you move on. Yeah. Whereas at Minetek, it's actually there from cradle to the grave approach. It's an end-to-end solution. We're there from the very beginning with the problem, and we see it through until they actually are at a situation where it's solved, or they want to increase their capacity and purchase more from us because it's solved the problem so well that they want to increase that.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to wrap up, and and that's the reason I'm talking a little bit more about sales with you, is specifically because you don't have that. You both have that sort of, you can tell there's a very much approach. It's not this this sort of like show up and try to make the sale, and it's sort of bleeding through the interview. So I was genuinely curious how you just approached that, and the ROI answer is. Yeah, that's how I'd want to be sold too. I don't care don't give me a bunch of methods. Give me the numbers. That's what I need to see.
I was going to say, and sometimes, as you say, you put it to the point, is sometimes it's not, it's not for every application, in the sense that nothing's a one-stop fix for everything. You know what I mean? And there are some cases definitely where if you're in a situation where you don't have, a water problem, we're not in the business of providing solutions for places that don't have problems, to put it simply.
Well, and Yannick, like you said, Yannick, sorry, that like asking the questions, taking that time. That's I literally ask questions for a living. Usually if you ask questions, if you have an answer for somebody, but you throw it out before they've got a chance to describe where they're coming from. Sometimes they just shut it down just because they haven't even got a chance to work out their own thoughts yet. You're springing on another thing to them. It's overcapacity. And just taking that time to go, that's why I'm sure once you get onto site, getting onto site is the difference, because now you're walking, you're talking, you can't do that on a Zoom call and all those sorts of things. But, gentlemen, I have a feeling we could go on, but I won't keep you any longer. I really appreciate you both coming on the show. It's a great setup. You literally look like you're about to both. I saw the picture of you guys before we started. I was like, oh, do they host the podcast? So it's a great setup. Great to have you on. I hope we get to do it again. This is one of 3. Hopefully you can be on for 4 or 5.
Sounds good. Not a problem at all. It was really good to have this conversation with you, and we really appreciate your time. So looking forward to more.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you both. And thank you everybody for watching. Of course, we're going to have links to Minetek. And if you're watching this, we'll try to remember this will be released first. We'll try to remember when we get released the next 2 and 3, to put links into this so you can reference those right away. But just do a search and you'll find it. Minetek with Crownsman. Thank you everybody for watching. Check out their website. Check out their LinkedIn. You can connect directly with both Jake and Yannick on LinkedIn. And we will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.